Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. It's your guy Great here again, and we are going to continue from where we left off in the last episode. So in the last episode, we were able to complete the comment list integration. And moving forward, we want to integrate adding of comment itself. So I've dragged it to doing already. And coming back to our Figma design, this is what the modal is meant to look. And the idea here is that when you click on add comment, this modal comes up. Okay? So ahead of this, I've made preparations for the modal so that we don't have to go over that and waste time on that. So I'll just go back to my code and showcase what the component looks like. So here is the modal component, and I'm using a hook function here. So it's called use modal. So everything I'm returning from here is just the get modal content, the show modal, and close modal. So most times we won't need the close modal outside, but sometimes we just want to have that in case we will need it. And the structure is quite simple. With the latest HTML update, you have access to the dialog, which you can use to just implement your modal. So most of what I have here is just the styling. So here's the structure. You have the dialog. I made a reference to it using the React ref. Then I had a class to it, and every other thing within it are just basic. And this is where the content coming from, where the modal will be used, will be placed. And here is the structure. So this is to show the modal. So you get access to the modal reference and show modal. And if you want to close, you call this and it closes it up. And that's all we need to do. Then the major thing is within the style, which I've added a couple of styles for. So here is the modal dialog. I removed the default styling. So the padding and the border are all gone. The background color is white. Every of these are styling, and I believe we can easily check this out if we need to. So I won't bother dwelling too much on that. So back in our app folder within the page, we want to access the single block comments, which is this. Okay, so remember we implemented this to get our comments. Now we want to add comments. So first thing first, we are going to get the modal. So here we are going to have use modal. And that's all. So basically the use modal hook is as basic as it can be. I believe we can always extend if we want to. So in here we are going to get the modal content, then the set or rather show modal. And that's all we are going to need in regards to this. Then coming down here, within the add comment button, we can add an on-click function and reference the show modal here. Then also within the empty tag, I'm going to have the get modal content. Then here we're going to have our React node. So if we come back to the modal, we will see that the content takes in a React node. Okay. So here we are going to have the form or any other thing we want to have. So for now, I'll just have this as a div, and that's all. So if we come back to our style, we'll find out that there are some structure defined here. So we have the modal heading, and the idea is to handle how the heading is going to be placed. We have the modal footer, and we have the modal body. So this is exactly the way we are going to make use of it. So within this div, we can now have the dot modal heading. And the title for this is going to be add comments. Like that. Then the next is going to be dot modal body. And here we are going to have our form. So technically this is where we are meant to have our form, but remember we also have the modal footer, which is where we are going to place our submit button. And I want the form to also be available on that. So what I will do instead is I'm going to wrap this up with a form like this. We don't need the action. Then we are going to have the modal body as well as the modal footer. So dot modal footer. Like that. So in here we want to have the add button, the submit button. So here we're going to have button, and this is going to be submit. And the type is going to be submit. I think by default the type is submit, but it's okay to explicitly state it. Okay, so that's it for the footer. Then now for the body, we can have the input field. Then here we can have the name, placeholder, name. Then second is the test area. And the name of the test area is going to be the comment, like that. Then also a placeholder comment. Okay, so that's the basic structure. Let's see what this looks like. So if we try to add comments, this is what the form looks like. Not looking bad aside from the inside here. Everything kind of looks okay. So I'll just go ahead and play with the styling for the input field. And once I get that, I'll come back here. So after a couple of minutes playing around with this, here is what I came up with. And I think it looks nice. Not sure it entirely looks like the design, but I think it works with what we want. So we have the name and the comment, and that's all we need. So before we proceed to implementing this, let's quickly go over what I changed. So back in our code, within the comment, I changed the structure a little bit. So from just having the input, I changed it to having the structure. So everything is wrapped within an input group. Then we have the label, then the input itself. Then the same thing for the test area. We have the label and the input itself. And in terms of the styling, here is what it amounted to. So here is the style for the input group, quite straightforward. Here's the style for the input and test area. Then a little bit of adjustment for just the test area. And that's all I had to do to achieve this. Okay, so that's the structure we need. So the next thing now is to integrate this and ensure that we can add comments. So back in the comment file. So the way I'm going to work with this is that I'm going to create a ref and assign it to the form. So contrary to the usual way of having a data, then on change we update the data, which tends to kind of reload the page every time. Although we don't see that, but that's what happens. So this is going to be a more efficient way of doing this. So I'll come back here, create a ref. Alright, so this is all I have to do here. I'll define a form ref, then use the React use ref. So coming back here on the form, I'm going to reference this as form ref, like that. So next we can have the onSubmit function here. And we're just going to have a call to undo submit. So we've not defined this, let's do that. So this is going to be an async function because we are going to be making a request within here. And take note that we have the required flag here. So it means we can't actually submit until we've provided this value. So all we need to do here is just get access to the form data, okay? Before we actually delve into that, we need to prevent the default operation whenever we submit. So here we can have e of any, and here we can have e.prevent default. So one more thing before we proceed, I need to also add the required flag for this. So it's always going to be required as well. So back in here, to get access to the two fields, we can have this as const name, or better still, let's have it within the object format. So this becomes data, then this. So here we can have the name, and that would be the form ref dot current, because we are using use ref, then dot elements, then we take the name of that element, in this case name, then we get the value. Okay, so the same thing for the comment as well. So we have comment, then this becomes comment. Okay, so just before we proceed to any other thing, let's take a look at the result for this. So console.log data, like that. So if we come back to our browser, let's bring out our console. If we try to submit without entering anything, it's going to ask us to fill in. So here we can just have the name. Then the same thing for the comment, we have to fill it out. This is a comment. Then we submit. And now we have access to the data we need. So these are the data we need, and we are good with that. So that's the first step. And the next step now is to send this to our backend for request. So get data is just getting data and not posting anything. So what we want to have instead is export post data. So export const post data. And this doesn't require any type. All we need is just the endpoint. Then also this is going to return promise of a boolean. So the promise is going to be either true or false. Is it successful or not? And again, we're going to have const request or response. Let's call it response because this is expecting to return a response. The same thing for this as well, but it's just a name. We won't bother about that. So axios.posts. So we specify just like we've done before. Then next we are going to specify the data. So that means we need to send in the data here. And the data will just be of any type. So the data like that, again, we are going to try to catch an error if it exists. So we are going to return false by default, and we are assuming by default that everything failed. However, we can make a check here. If response, and that's if everything is successful, then we want to return true. Okay, looks like I'm missing something. Okay, so this should be a bracket. And that is more cleaner now. Okay, so here's the structure to post our data. If we come back to our comments, here we can post our data. So we have const res equals to await post data. Then again, we are going to have the comment URL here. So if you remember, to actually post a comment, we need to specify the blog ID as well. And for now, the only access we have is to the slug, so we also need to get access to the ID. So here we can place the ID as a string, even though we are expecting a number, but yeah, this will be converted along the line. So that works, but we need to be able to send the ID from somewhere. So if we come back here, which is the single blog default page, yeah, the requirement now has been updated. So we are expecting that for each blog, for the single blog, we are expecting an ID. So if we check here, yeah, we didn't make provision for that, but we can do that by just having ID as string. So by default, we are returning the ID from the server, so that should work. So now that that provision has been made, here we can now have the ID as the blog content dot ID. Okay, so that has been updated. Also, we don't need any of this anymore. Let's just delete it. Okay, coming back to our comments now. Before we make any request, actually, let's see that we are getting the ID. So we have the data here, and now we can also add the blog underscore ID. That's the expected structure. And this is going to be the ID. Let's see if we have that. So we have ID. And this is going to be ID. So let's take a look at this again. Let's refresh. Let's try to make a comment. Name. Comments. And we'll submit. So as you can see, we get the ID of 4, and I think that's all we need. So if we come back to here, we can uncomment this and send our data from our data. So if the comment was made successfully, then we can have if res. Then we want to set loading back to true. So set loading to true. Then we want to get comments again because we've updated it. Get comments. Then we'll reset our form. So form ref dot current dot reset. Then finally we want to close the modal. And currently we do not have a way to do that, so we have to get the close modal here as well. And we can just call it. So all this is happening if the request was successful. However, if it's not, so we can have else. Then we just want to alert that there was an error. There was an error. And that's all we need to do. Yeah, we could use a better way to show this error, but let's not bother about that. I believe if we want to, we can always implement that. An alert would do. So that is the setting here, and let's see if it works. So go back to our code, refresh. Let's open the network tab now to actually see the request being made. So if we try to add comments, again, my name, testing. Alright, so that's a 500 error, and so the payload was sent, blog_id, the comment, everything. Okay, so this kind of had to do with the end/ issue, and I think I know where that is coming from. So we probably need to end it with a slash, and let's try again. Let's close this, let's submit. Alright, so that worked now. However, one thing I noticed while we were submitting is that there is no status for when we are submitting, and we need that as well. So let's quickly implement that. So I'll just duplicate the loading. So cross loading. I'll call this form submit. Again, set form submit. So this is going to be false by default. And coming back to on submit, so here we are going to set form submit to true. So that's going to indicate the loading state. And after everything, we want to set form submit to false. Then we can come back to the button itself. We can have, if it's form submit, then we can say submitting. Else we have submit. Then also we can have the disable here. So disabled if form submit. So that means we can't click it again when we've submitted it already. So yeah, let's test that again. Add the comment, myself again. This is the third comment. Now let's test. Okay, so we got the submitting, we got our comment as soon as we post it, and it seems we are good to go. However, before we leave here, we need to determine the number of comments we have. So here we are showing the number of comments we have. So let's take a look at that. So here is the number of comments. So here is the number of comments. When we are loading, we don't want to bother about this. So we can do this if not loading. So if not loading, then we show this. So that is an assumption that we've gotten our comment at that point. And here we want to do comments dot length, like that. So let's take a look again. So now we have 3, which is what we want. Let's go back to our home page. Let's check another blog post. So we have 0, and we can add to this. Okay, so I think that works, and I think our implementation is successful. And back to our Trello board, we can drag this to done because it looks like we are done with that. So currently our next task is meant to be deployment, and I think that's an oversight because at the moment we still have the tag menu to work on. So when we click on the tag menu, we should see the blocks associated with that. And I'll update the Trello board with that task, and that will be the next task we'll be working on. And after that task, we are going to have our cleanup task. And in there, we are going to implement this to actually review the current day information. Then we are going to clean up the time format. And I think that will be all we need to do. Then from there, we can now proceed to the deployment tasks. So that's all for today. If you enjoy it, kindly leave a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one.